Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is Doman International's weekly webinar where we have parents join from all around the world with children with special needs, and those parents ask us, their most important questions. And today we have a special guest with us, ROSALIND Doman. ROSALIND is the clinical director of Doman International. And this interview is called 40 Years of Teaching Children to Walk, because that's what ROSALIND's been doing for the last 40 years, helping kids with special needs with mobility problems learn to crawl, creep, and walk, and also helping even children who can walk and run, teaching the families mobility activities that can help brain development and help the children in a whole host of different areas. So whether you are following this on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, go ahead and type your questions into the comments box, and we will ask for Rosalind's help in answering them. So, and by the way, I also need to say Rosalind is my mom too. So, I might go back and forth between calling her mom and Rosalind. So I guess my first question for you is, how do you feel the Doman Method addresses children with mobility problems differently than how typical physical therapy or other therapies often address these kids?
Yeah, there is a gigantic difference between the two. Now, I have to say, in the past 20 years, the physical therapy for children with brain injury are trying to do the things that we do. For example, they know that tummy time is good. I'm saying tummy timing is in quotes. Or they may know that balance is good, but they really don't know the reason why. And because of that, the program is not intense enough. So, what we do is that we create what really happens in mobility in a well child. And by doing this, we will get a child crawling and creeping and walking. If you do it as just an activity, like I'm going to get my child to stay in the quad position, or I'm going to get my child to creep or sit up, these are just products of movement. So that's the big difference. Our program also, in truth, I wouldn't say it's intense, but the children spend a lot of time on the floor. The floor is their battleground of going from immobility to mobility, which is also very important. And now, I say in the past 20 years, I think therapists do understand that there is some importance of having children on the floor, but they don't understand the why. And the why is that mobility creates organization of the brain. Mobility creates improved respiration so the child can further himself in all areas of the profile. And if you only did the floor or inclined floor, which is another topic, or crawling and creeping, and that's the only thing that you did with your child, the child would be greatly, greatly improved.
Yeah, and you mentioned crawling and creeping and walking. And I think so often when parents have a child who doesn't walk, understandably, they focus so much on how do I get my child walking? And sometimes will not think about the steps of crawling and creeping. Can you talk about why are crawling and creeping important for a child to learn how to walk? Why not just skip them?
Yeah, again, we have a developmental profile that we spent years in creating. And this profile is a diagram of how a well baby develops. And if you skip any of the stages, it will hurt the higher levels. So if you, for example, if your child has no light reflex, he'll never be able to see. Okay. If your child has not had the opportunity to crawl and creep, and you stand him up to walk, he won't have the balance that he needs to do the walking or the coordination, because all these things are developed by giving him major opportunity on the floor. So the important thing is to give the child enough opportunity to be able to move from crawling, to be able to move to creeping, and to be able to get to walking. And it's a pathway that uh, we all do. We just, in a well child, we just take it for granted, but it's not to be taken for granted. It is a very important fact, and probably one of the most important things that we do.
Yeah, and you mentioned before a lot of the time, for example, physical therapists now know tummy time is important. Unfortunately, the reason why they know tummy time is important is because they immobilized children with special needs for so long and kept them on their backs all day that the children started to develop flat heads, their hair would wear off, and the children wouldn't advance at all in mobility. So they kind of learned the hard way, okay, we've got to give tummy time. But I've noticed, Rosalind, that even when a lot of therapists or like experts are asked, well, what about tummy time? Like, how much tummy time should we give a child? They have no idea. They'll say, I don't know, 10 minutes a day or something like that. They'll kind of throw something out. There seems to be no understanding. So if you're talking about an immobile child, how much time are they spending on their bellies on the flat floor or on the inclined floor, like you mentioned?
Yeah, if we have a child who really can't move, we're looking at spending, I would say, as much time as possible, and then pray for even more time so that your child is on the floor 24 hours a day. What happens with a well child is that they start moving just because they may have had 2 minutes of opportunity. But for that hurt child, they need, a child with a brain injury, they need 5 times more, 10 times more, 20 times more than the average well child. So if you're looking for hours, I would say every waking hour except for eating, feeding, loving, bathing, but as much as possible. And the worst thing, sometimes we do see children with brain injury or children who can't walk, they're sitting up in a wheelchair or a stroller, which is the worst thing that you could do, because if a child is not strong enough to creep or to stand up, he doesn't have the strength in his back to sit up. And this can create a scoliosis just by doing that. When I see children who cannot walk in a wheelchair for hours on time, I know that this is really a bad activity. And by the way, children love to be on the floor. It gives them a freedom that they've never had. They can go all over if they can move, and if not, whatever they were doing sitting up, they could do laying on the floor.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to pull up a video, Rosalind. Hopefully, you can see it on my screen. Can you see a little boy on the incline crawling track?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm going to show you this video, and then I'm going to just kind of ask you to describe for everyone what's going on. Okay, so let's just watch the video first. So this is a little boy with Down syndrome, and his family has come for several appointments at Doman International's clinic. You can see him crawling down. Here's the video of him later on crawling on the flat floor.
So this little boy on the incline,
Yeah.
first of all, you can notice that his arms, legs, feet are bare, nothing on them, so he can have the ability to feel as he's moving, very important, and also to get a good traction with the floor. He's put on a smooth surface, and as you can see, this floor is very smooth, so that movement is easy for him. Also, all children who can't move, they're put on a inclined floor, a floor that allows gravity to be on his side. So, when kids are put on the floor and they can't move forward and then they move their arms and legs, it's really frustrating to them. It's like, where am I going? And if you put them on an inclined floor, then they move their arms and legs, and oh my God, they move a couple of inches and they go. And I love seeing when this happens for the first time to a child. It's as if they realize I can move. I moved my arms and legs and I can move for the first time in my life. So it's easy, fun. We always make sure that the inclined floor is less than 2 minutes, so the child is really successful on it. As you can see, he's very happy moving, and he just thinks he's great getting down to the bottom.
Yeah, and Rosalind, right before this session, I was actually seeing a family who's has an appointment with Doman International this week. Now, they happen to have a child with Down syndrome, like the boy in this video. And I'm not sure if the people watching can see this, but this boy has a problem with visual convergence. So if you actually look at his eyes, this eye, which is on our right, is internally, it has drifted inward, right? And so there's a misalignment of the eyes. And that can create all kinds of problems. It can create issues with depth perception and seeing things clearly, and later on in life, reading and writing. Could you talk, Rosalind, about why are activities like crawling and creeping helpful for developing vision? Because I think that may not be obvious for a lot of people.
Yes, of course. Well, again, I have to go back to our developmental profile, that you could see that the development of convergence occurs at around 1 year of age. No, not exactly at 1 year, but at 1 year of age, a child uses both eyes together rather well. Why is that? It just doesn't happen. It happens because the child has had movement on his stomach. He's moving and looking at both sides. He's getting up on his hands and knees. And just by doing that alone, because there's an uh, the distance from your eyes to your hand, it's around 18 inches, and a child's is a little bit less, and that's exactly what you need in order to start convergence. And when babies get up on their hands and knees and they're looking around, this will create better vision and also will improve using both eyes together. So the action of crawling and creeping will develop convergence, will also develop auditory improvement. Very important is because of better respiration, you will see the child having more sounds and speaking better. Many, many different things occur just by getting children to crawl and creep.
Yeah, and I'd also like to point out here, you can see that this boy, because he spends a lot of time on his belly, not only is he mobile and he can get all around the house for his needs, his neck control is very good because he picks his head up to look around, right? A child who's on their back all the time is like a turtle on a shell. And not only are they unable to move, which is so important for developing their brain and gaining mobility, they never have the chance to develop the muscles in their neck. And so, very, very important. So anyway, you can see little Beck here has really good neck control. Rosalind, sometimes people will say, I have a child with autism who already walks, or I have a child with Down syndrome who already walks, or I have my child's developmentally delayed intellectually, but physically they're fine. Why do we need to focus on mobility? What do you say to those parents?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, children, trisomy 21, children who have been diagnosed with autism, usually their injury is in the midbrain. Usually the injury is in the midbrain. And because of this, they need a lot of programs that will develop this area of the brain. So the first is that both crawling and creeping are two programs that will organize the midbrain, and this will create less hyperactivity in children. It will create more organization in children, because crawling, especially when you move on your stomach, will improve respiration, will then improve his language. So all these things will occur with just putting crawling and creeping into a program. And, I've seen incredible results with just our very basic initial program of being on their hands and knees, doing meters of crawling, meters of creeping. And, these children who couldn't read, they read better. These children who couldn't understand, their understanding has improved, and their language and manual competence has improved. It's most of these children, because they had problems even at birth, they were held a lot, because they were given the diagnosis of having trisomy 21 or autism. They didn't spend as much time on the floor as other kids did. So they really do need so much more time to crawl and creep, to organize the midbrain, and, just to improve overall function.
Yeah. And I think that this is such an eye opener for people, because I was speaking today with a family with a 2-year-old child with Down syndrome. The child doesn't walk yet. And once they had heard what all the things we had to say about crawling and creeping and why it's so important for brain growth and development, they viewed their child in a completely different way. They said, great, like, let's just get our child crawling and creeping as much as possible, because they saw the value in that. So, Rosalind, what, out of interest, if we take a child who starts the Doman Method immobile, so are you always going to try to advance through the crawling and creeping stages before walking? How often, I guess, rephrase the question, how often will a child walk without crawling or creeping first?
Well, we have seen that. Okay. We've seen children come to us who skipped the stages of crawling and creeping and just came walking. And for those children, we definitely would go back to crawling and creeping. Now, in saying that, there are children who have just begun to walk after not moving at all. So to get them to crawl and creep when they have this newfound mobility is sometimes difficult. So we may improve their walking and then go back to crawling and creeping. But if a child starts on our program, we always go through the proper steps. First crawling, then creeping, and then after creeping, walking. And we have to build up certain distances too. It just doesn't happen. And we have, in the past, I would say this was around 25 years ago, we kept very detailed records of how much children needed to do to go from one level of mobility to another. This is incredible information, really incredible. And we it's actually in the book Smart Baby, Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby. So this, because it's not a secret. But for a child who has injury trisomy 21, we do look at perhaps crawling up to 300 meters in a day on your tummy, so that little boy, in order to get up to start creeping. Now, most children begin creeping before they hit the 300 meters mark, but we always set that up as that's your goal. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. That's very interesting. We have some comments that have come in. So Stacy says, "Thank you for this. This is always interesting to me." She says, "In the UK, we call creeping crawling. We don't have crawling. It's not a milestone that they focus on. My child never did it. She rolled around instead." So I want to make a couple comments, and then I'll let Rosalind give her thoughts. So at the University of London, they did a huge study, probably the biggest study that I've ever heard of, where they tracked thousands of children and their mobility development. And what they found is if a child wasn't creeping on their hands and knees by 9 months of age, their likelihood of being diagnosed with a developmental disorder, right, some kind of special need, neurodevelopmental condition, skyrocketed. Okay. And so creeping on the hands and knees is often, you'll often find it kind of talked about as a milestone. Crawling on the belly, I find, Rosalind, I'm not sure if you agree, it's almost entirely ignored, almost like it's like a forgotten milestone, to Stacy's point. And the frightening thing is, Stacy, I especially saw after COVID, as children started to become more and more delayed in reaching milestones, even the American kind of health authorities started to remove certain milestones to look out for. So I think creeping was actually removed from our, kind of recommendations for pediatricians on what to observe. So it's, and for us, that's incredibly scary, because those milestones are not only important for mobility development, they're important overall for brain development. When a child crawls and creeps, it is really good for their cognitive development, right? It helps vision, it helps auditory processing, it improves tactility. And for those of us like me, Rosalind's more focused on mobility development. I'm more interested in cognitive development. But one of the first things I'll tell parents about cognitive development is we got to get your child moving, because it's so important. Rosalind, any other thoughts you want to add to that?
No, but it's really true. They've changed all the requirements for, I think, I had a family member who was delayed in speech, and they said, the parents said, well, we were told he was okay because you don't need 2 words of speech at 1 year of age. But parents aren't stupid. So, these parents said, but that's not true, because all the other kids are saying 2 words, and go, yeah, you're right. It's not true. So they think they're fooling parents by leaving these things out, when parents have created their own. They know they have created their own guideline. We know what they have to do.
Yeah, and they're kind of like 2 games are played here. First is with ages, where they'll change the ages where specific milestones are achievable. But then there's another issue, Rosalind, where sometimes they focus on certain milestones. Like a lot of focus is put on rolling, for example, when a child rolls over or when a child sits on their own. Can you talk, why is crawling and creeping more important than rolling and sitting?
Yeah. So, besides crawling and creeping, of course, are the 2 activities that will make a difference in brain growth, improvement of vision. Rolling and sitting up, they're products of crawling and creeping. Okay, they're products. So any child who can crawl across the room can certainly roll. Any child who's getting up on their hands and knees can certainly sit. So if you're doing an excellent floor program, you really don't have to waste time worrying about it. Now, I had my youngest son, he didn't have a neurological problem, but he was on the floor all day, all the time. And his mobility was incredible. At 3 months of age, he was getting up on his hands and knees and moving and creeping a little bit. Well, he was sitting up. And I was in the airport once, traveling from one side of the airport to the other. And at 3.5 months of age, he was sitting up holding on. I have a picture of him doing it. And I would have mothers stop me, because mothers will always do this. And they would say, oh, your baby is so cute. How old is he? Because they're thinking, I don't think my kid is doing that. And I'll say, well, he's almost 4 months. And they literally, I had 2 mothers say, oh, no, he's not. Just because 4-month-olds don't sit up. Now, I have to tell you right now, I love my baby son, but he was not special. He just had the opportunity. Well, he's special to me. He just had the extra opportunity to move. And this has to do with children who have neurological problems. Do not worry about rolling, because if your child can crawl across the floor, rolling will happen. Do not worry about sitting up, because if a child can get into the creep position or has crawled enough, sitting up will be very easy. So these things are just product of the mobility pathway.
Yeah. And one of the, I think the best, and it's so simple, pieces of advice that you can give to a parent about mobility development is whatever your child's highest ability is in mobility, if it's crawling, if it's creeping, if it's walking, if it's running, whatever that is, have them do it as much as possible. Because very often children learn walking, and some parents might even think, oh, okay, we've achieved everything there is to achieve with mobility. They walk now. But, Rosalind, you and I were, this happened several months ago, but a couple that we know came to you about their young child who wasn't speaking very much. And they said to you, what should we do? And one of your first pieces of advice was bring him out for daily walks. Can you talk about that and talk about with that boy what happened?
Yeah, and I have to say, I at least this has happened at least 15 times, and developmental language occurs differently with every child. Okay, but parents know if a child is behind, or parents know if they're worried. I had a family come to me, and this child was doing well in every other way, but his language was really lagging. He just had a couple of words of speech, and parents knew he had to be much further. Very smart little boy, very smart little boy. So I said, you really just have to do one thing. You have to go out for a daily walk, and you have to increase this walking to at least 20 minutes a day. And this will be just enough in order to improve his language and improve his respiration, and he will start saying more words. A week later, parents called me up and said, I cannot believe it. He just, he's saying now each day a new word. It's as if this miracle has happened. Now, we'll never know, but of course parents knew, and I knew that it was just from the walking every day, walking nonstop, walking for 20 minutes, and just having a great time. And kids will, there are two types of kids who run around all the time, but that's not really walking nonstop, because it's the walking nonstop and building up your walking nonstop that will really create the neurological growth that you need. And then there are the kids who really like to be carried. And this was this little boy. He just wanted to be carried everywhere. He just thought, this is what mom and dad's job is. Even though I can walk, I've been walking for months now, they carry me everywhere. So first they had to get him to a point in which he would actually start walking a little bit outside. And then once he started doing that, then they just built up his walking distances, and it took them around a week or a week and a half to get him to be walking, not 20 minutes, but enough to make a difference in his language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a follow up here from Stacy who says, you're so right. She has global developmental delay. She didn't start crawling, creeping for you guys until 20 months. She's also nonverbal at 3 years of age. I wish I knew back then what I know now. And, Stacy, I want to say that 3 years old is still young. I mean, there's a lot to be done that can be done now for speech development, for mobility development. Stacy, I'm not sure if you've read the book. I've got a book behind me. It's called The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, which is our kind of foundational book about our program. I definitely recommend that. It has chapters on speech development, on mobility development, on cognitive development. So many of the issues that a child diagnosed with global developmental delay could be helped by. And Colleen, do you mind if I just pass it over to you for a second? If people want to learn more and like schedule a call with you, can you talk about how that happens?
Yes, absolutely. So my contact information, hi. Yeah, if you've got questions about perhaps working with us, learning more about the Doman Method steps, my name is Colleen Hudson. My contact information is info at domaninternational.org. My phone number is country code 1-814-232-8668. You can also send a direct message to us through Instagram or Facebook, because I see all of those as well. So if that's the easiest thing on your phone, send a message and say, I've got questions. I want to schedule a call. There's no obligation to the call, but I can answer your immediate questions and talk about what we do, and certainly get you the right resources. You can have more information for your child.
Colleen, did I put your correct phone number up there on the screen?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. I'm starting to actually remember it. Soon your number will be the only number I actually remember. Oh, good. Stacy says the book is right next to her. Yeah. I'll start it when I finish the What to Do book. Great. Fantastic. All right. So let's see if I've got any other questions. So there's a question here. This is on Instagram. Can you repeat the name of the book and the author? Now we've mentioned a few books. I mentioned the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, which is by me, Spencer Doman, and by my dad, Douglas Doman. And
Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby, and that's by Douglas Doman. It's an incredible book. It has great photos in it. It will take you from a child who can't move to a child who can run. We wrote it my husband wrote it for both children who have neurological problems and well kids. And I really think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And Rosalind, I'm going to have you back at some point, or Mom, I'll have to have you back at some point to talk about your experience as a mom doing the program, because my sister Morgan, who talks about her experience too as a child doing the program, had some really severe reading and learning problems as a young child, and you did the program with her. How long did you do the program for?
First of all, we did a small, I would say, stimulation program of reading, a little mobility. But when we realized she had bigger problems, so probably for 2.5 years before everything clicked. And I have to say, everything just clicked. It just all came together. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perfect. So I didn't warn you about this question in advance, but it's something I ask any staff member of Doman International who comes on. I always like to ask the question, can you tell us the story about one child with special needs who changed your life or who changed your outlook at life? Do any stories come to mind for you?
Wow.
Just a little question. In your 40 years, can you think of any?
More than 40 years. I would have to say it's 45 years that I've been doing this. Okay. But yeah, that, well, I would have to say that right now, I'm going to talk about this moment. There's a little girl in Singapore who's around 10 years of age, and she has a syndrome. She had seizures, a lot of medication. And when she first started the program, she was on one of those inclined floors and her feet were up and she didn't even know that she had legs to move. And sometimes I just felt, wow, if she could only move an inch, that would be great. And this little girl, she came back crawling down the incline floor, and then she started crawling. And the thing that strikes me about, little Rhea is that she, every day, she just does her very, very best. Okay. She knows why she's doing it. Okay. She knows what she's doing. She never balks at anything, which for a 9-year-old, that's pretty impressive. And her mother has gotten her from immobility to walking. She started walking just this past year. And, she's gone from taking 2 steps to now she's walking 4 meters, which is around 5 yards, from one side of the room to the other. And, it's just, parents were told that she was going to do nothing for the rest of her life. She would just seizure, be on medication, and all that is behind her. And I have a lot of stories like that, and I don't know why this is the one that really, it's, to me, people say, how do you succeed on the program? And this mother succeeds because she gets up every day, and she's not anything special, but she just says, I'm going to do this with my daughter. And she has love and respect for this girl. And they've been going at it for a couple of years now. And just wonderful, wonderful people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And actually, one of my favorite things in your house, Mom, is you have a shelf with photos of different kids. And, for a regular person, they probably wouldn't know much about, they wouldn't realize why it's special. But they're all children that started on the program immobile and are now walking.
Right. I call it my road gallery.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, listen, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. We did get a bunch of messages, just loving messages saying, Rosalind, it was nice to see you. I didn't pull them all up because we got it from a bunch of different people. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. So thanks so much for joining, Rosalind, and or Mom rather. And Colleen, one last question. So for a parent who's just brand new, who might ask like about resources online, about Doman International, what would you recommend they do?
So definitely visit our website. There's a lot of information there, as well as you can click on links to our books. We also have YouTube. We post videos quite frequently. So social media is a good way to get more information. But if you really want in-depth information, the book is definitely a great place to order the book and then call me. Don't wait to get the book. Order the book and then call me right away, and we'll talk about what you're going to learn when you read the book. Because of course, many families opt to work with us directly to bring their kids for appointments, which is wonderful. And that's really what we do, is we design the programs. But reading the book, a family can do a lot on their own. So really any of the books, but certainly the Doman Method book. So yeah, visit the website, but use my phone number and call and or email, and we'll get in touch really soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Rosalind. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Colleen. Everyone have a great rest of your week. We'll be back here next week at the same time. Bye-bye.
Bye.